what are the pathways out of towards equitable research partnerships and collaborations? Because we know they're inequitable. We know what the problem is: funding driving the money, the inequitable resource situation between the global south and the north. What, if we were to leave this room and go back to our universities and people asked us, okay, you were on a jaunt in Switzerland, give me 5 takeaways for sustainable pathways towards unequal research collaborations, what should I say to my senate of the university?
Well, thank you very much. We've got 4 panelists, so can we give you 4 takeaways? So could we ask each of our panelists for their top tip in building equitable partnerships? And shall we make sure that the link with Tora is still there and ask him first? Tora, are you with us?
Yeah, I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, very good.
Did you get the question?
I think I did, yeah.
Right, so what's your top tip, your number 1 most important thing?
I guess the most important would be that it should be something for both. It should be equitable in a way that we both learn from each other and we both contribute to each other. I think the idea of for instance, with the building courses, that it's co-created, it's co-shared, that the research is benefiting both local communities where the research is done, but also that it gives something to both universities and give opportunities to both students and researchers at both universities on equal footing. I think that's maybe the most important.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a symmetry point. Bukola, could we turn to you next?
I think one of the...
Yeah, it's okay, it's okay.
I think one of the presenters mentioned, you know, the phrase, not for us without us. And I think, you know, the first step has to be, you know, leadership. And having equity in terms of leadership and diversity in terms of leadership. Because we know a lot of these issues will never get solved is if, you know, there are no diversity on the table. So I think I think it was Dawn that I mentioned to you yesterday how glad I was that within WUN that we were handing off from one female chair to another female chair. And, you know, that would help in terms of infusing and ensuring that, you know, women's voices are represented on the table. And I would also say that we also have to ensure that, you know, the leadership attends to some of the inequities that we faced in the past.
Thank you very much. Patarache.
Yes, I think my top tips for that, for your question, is we need open discussions, because, you know, we from, you know, different cultures, different backgrounds, or even different, you know, government rules, something like that. So at the beginning, both parties, that if they willing to form the partnerships, it's important that, you know, they have some discussion, they get some, you know, familiar with each others. I have some cases that, you know, at the beginning, they are quite reluctant or probably shy to discuss something openly. But after they have done some work for some times, you know, conflict happen. And because they didn't, you know, plan this before, they didn't talk about this before, or they are not that close enough to open mind to talk about that. So I think at the beginning, I would recommend all the researchers, you know, if you form the relationship with, you know, research partners, it's better that you talk with all the variety that may happen in the futures, and so that you get you close to each others and you understand, you know, the background from each other. So I think that's very important at the beginning.
Thank you. And Sue.
So I think I want to go back to leadership. I think that if we're going to work across the very diverse spaces, we have to be prepared to co-lead projects with complete equity in how we co-lead. And I think that this then will bring us to the point that we will be prepared to lobby for each other, and I firmly believe that we have to lobby for each other. It's no good me lobbying for free access to journals from Cape Town. Absolutely no point. But if others are lobbying with me, who are paying lots for journals, that will change. And I think that one can use that same logic then right across the sharing of physical equipment, of how we handle our data, etc. If we don't have the co-leadership where we put the importance of the different main context on the table equally, then I don't think we'll ever achieve that.
Okay, thank you. I hope that's given Tawana some takeaways. Who's next? Please, Nick.
Thank you. Some great presentations. Both Sue and Pathrachai talked about industry and the importance as both funders and partners. I can see challenges and opportunities in terms of equitable relationships working with industry. So I guess the question is, how do we make sure that we work with industry in a way that is truly beneficial to all partners? So how do we actually turn them into a force for good and driving equitable partnerships rather than some of the perhaps more challenging aspects we have with working with them?
Okay, so will you kick off there?
Yes, well, we actually have the same question, and probably the problem that you mentioned. As a university, it's very academically oriented. And when we talk to industry, they're looking for their businesses, how the product's going to come out to the market. So normally, researchers in the university, they don't know much about businesses, marketing, and finances at all. So at the beginning, as I mentioned, that it's very important that, we set goal to each other, that, what you want, what we can provide you, and what would be the timeline that we are looking for. Because sometimes, researchers, they are busy with several other things, teachings and doing something else that probably not in the same paces as the industry wants. So that's why I think it's important that, and sometimes industry, they expect something, that beyond the research in the lab. They expect something that, utilizable, and it is needed by the communities, which the researcher, they probably don't set goal that far, something like that. So that's what happened in the real life. So I think it's important that when we set up the project with industry, we talk with every detail that what would be the timeline, what would be the goal that we want to see at the same pace. So I think that's very important, because otherwise in the midway, people running at different paces, and then problem happen. So that's one of the problem that we see. So I think talking is still very, very important at the beginning. Yeah.
And Sue?
So I'd like to add on that I think that one has to come to a joint agenda of the research. And there are places in working with industry where, from the academic research space, we're unlikely to meet a joint agenda that will work well for us. And there are other places where it works absolutely beautifully. So, for instance, if one is doing drug validation studies, it's very difficult to have a completely university-driven agenda in that. And in fact, my university don't do that work for that reason. Whereas if you are looking towards something which is maybe more pre-competitive and more focused on social good and so on, one can often have an agenda where we both can have an exactly aligned agenda, and that space works beautifully. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's, well, I'll ask something while others are pondering, and I'm really, really struck by what Tora said about his work in Mozambique a long time ago, where there was one journal available to support the collaboration that he was doing, and it was the Norwegian Journal of Archaeology, which I think, very modestly, he said that may not have been the most useful journal. But Sue, you've been saying also about this continuing problem of access to our accumulated knowledge, however flawed that knowledge might be, but we have to have access to it so that we can enhance it and qualify its problems. So how do we break the racket that is academic publishing? we've been complicit in that in the global north by paying ridiculous prices for access to the materials that we have actually produced through our academics, and then we pay for it again. How can we break that racket? Sue?
So I mean, I think it's a really difficult one, and I think that by trying to move to open access, we've actually got ourselves into an even worse position, because we're now paying to publish, but we still need to pay to read what isn't published that way. So now we're paying twice, and you know, for universities like mine, it's a crisis. We also have exchange rate on top of that. Tawana doesn't want to know about the problems, he wants to know about the solutions. The only way I can see that we're going to get there is if we stop being complicit. And to stop being complicit, we have to do it on a big scale. It's not going to help UCT saying we're not going to do this any longer. You know, we're a little drop in the ocean. Even the whole of South Africa, because we buy together to some degree. But if a whole bundle of what are viewed as the really prestigious universities were to take this on, or a bundle of networks were to take it on, well, maybe the whole publishing space would collapse, but maybe we'd invent a new one. As long as we carry on doing what we're doing, we're keeping some companies very comfortable, and we're paying for our own hard-done work, and then we're paying to read it. It's a very strange system.
But we may have to take on our most prestigious professors who really love to be published in Nature and Science and so on, and it's those which are the hardest to break. Bukola, you wanted to come in on this.
My thought is, I do have another group that I just started on intersectionality, and this came up as part of the discussion, and people that had a really, really intersectional mindset were saying, no, we don't publish in high impact journals, we publish in open access, which I know many of the high impact journals are not free open access journals that you don't have to pay for. So this was the discussion. I think, in addition to what Sue had said, one of the things that we have to look at is how do we rethink issues related to impact? And what do we mean by impact? And I think there are several ways to measure impact, such as, policy and knowledge mobilization to industries. I think we have to start bringing that more into the forefront of the agenda. To really, really look at in what ways can we have equitable impact across diverse sectors and across diverse geographical zones.
I'm going to come to Jane in a moment, but I wanted to ask Tora to reflect on that point because you raised it first.
Yeah, we have tried many times to raise this with the funders as well, with NORAD, with Swedish SIDA, with Danida in Denmark. In all my meetings with them, I raised the subject of publishing and the unfairness of my colleagues sitting at other universities with no access to literature. And people say they don't publish, but why do we think they don't publish? Of course they don't publish in the sort of top journals, because they have no access to the latest literature. And I think, yes, maybe if all the universities and the large universities organizations, like African Association of Universities, like WUN, for that matter, IAU, took this problem up. And IAU have done so, also with funding agencies and all. But it's a big, strong industry there, so it's a difficult fight.
Okay, I've got two further interventions from the audience. Firstly to Jane, and then I'll come to you. Okay, are you on this topic as well, Jane?
I am.
Okay, well
yes.
let's take that intervention and also just here, please, and we may well go back to the panel after that. Jane.
Thank you very much. I have a comment and a question. One comment is that in addition to the publishers charging very high fees for publishing, they also take the data and then sell it back to us, and they also are in cahoots with the ranking bodies and use it to rank us. So that's just a further comment. The question is, I wonder if there might be some way to engage with government from a policy angle and ask for government action, especially where it's related to federally funded or government-funded research that requires publishing and open access to data. Might there be a way to collaborate at national levels to break some of this up?
Okay, we've got a whole stream of people now. Yojana next, and then two there. If you can get the microphone to the right place, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to comment actually that the European Union now requires under its Horizon programs and that it is open access, and I think that's opened it up quite a bit. I mean, the publishers don't have any choice in the matter because these are very, very high quality, high-end programs. And their reputations in publishing the material also depend on it. The second thing I'll say is that there have been projects run by WHO, and I know this was the case with Ebola, where they have got together academic publishers and made them reduce the cost of, particularly in the medical field, of groups of journals relating to that sphere. A lot of these have now expired, and I think there does need to be similar types of, how shall I say, scaled reduction of costs across whole discipline areas, but somebody needs to moderate it, if you like, and that was WHO, and I know Gates Foundation is thinking the same.
Great, thanks. The EU is doing great work, but I had a big complaint from my physicists recently because they still want to publish in a journal which refuses to comply. So it is a challenge. We have to challenge our professors to accept that the rules need to change. Two final interventions, and I'm going to go back to the panel for a last round, please.
The same as the previous comment. It's about the European Open Science Cloud, and I think we should also look to the EU for how they head-on kind of challenge both these publishers, but also the kind of the platforms from the Google and Amazon and so on, and how they actually, as a region, do this. And in a few years, hopefully they can break up some of these very powerful conglomerates that are owning the data or the platforms. And of course, this is for the European Union and for the Horizon Europe program. But if you start with the European Open Science Cloud, that could also be developed into a global open science cloud. So I think that is they are going ahead and trying to do this and solve this for us. Thank you.
Kind of makes you wish you were in the European Union, doesn't it? Sorry, the microphone, please. Microphone, excuse me. That's it. Last intervention there, and then we'll go back to the panel. Thank you.
Yeah. Concerning this important topic of open publications, and we have analyzed we have analyzed the business model around a publication. So we have detected, it's logical, three elements. The first is the production of research results, which is done by professors, researchers, universities. Second, we have the evaluation phase. So the evaluation phase, which is managed by the journals, is also done by professors, by academics. So it goes also to professors. And finally, the indexation and the publication itself, who is keeping this publication, which is the journals, the indexation offices, which internationally we have two of them, Scopus and Web of Science. And well, actually, the model has to change. We have seen this change from open access, from the normal way of doing things to open access. But we understand that this has to change already. If we analyze who is keeping this information, which now is the journals, we have open repositories right now. The goal is to develop an academic evaluation of this research. And we have the professors here. I mean, if we put it together and we develop a kind of evaluation, multi-dynamic based on a digital phase, probably we can develop a new form of business model to do that and have an open access for everyone and everybody. So this is something that probably WUN can develop, and because we are here 25 universities all over the world, and probably this is an element for that. And concerning intellectual property, I think that taking the projects phases, and the goal here is to take some risks. The risk is probably that we will lose in the first time. We have devoted a lot of money to develop an intellectual property, but if we don't take this risk, we will always see this intellectual property under the desk. So this is something that probably we will lose in the very first stages, but then we will go further. Okay.
Thank you so much. Back to the panel. Patarachai, we didn't ask you about the open access issue, and IP came up, so perhaps you'd like to respond.
Right. So in Thailand, actually, we know there's no publishers in Thailand, so we have quite less opportunity for that negotiation. But we experience the same thing that, for publishing in the open access, it's quite very high fee. And some publisher, they offer the, reduction for some countries with the low incomes, which Thailand is not part of that. So sometimes we want to be a low-income countries for that, but they try to define countries that get opportunities, which I think very few countries can get that opportunity for reductions. So, and I also agree with Janine that it's not just the publication fee; it's related to other thing else. Some publisher, they open companion journals that going to be open access. So sometimes we don't want to be in open access, but we are pushed to be open access by the publishers, that they suggest that would you like to move to that journal instead, which is open access. Right, pay more, something like that. So we are kind of pushed by the publishers to publish in open access. So that's another issue that I think many researchers found that. So basically I have no answer for publishing fee right now because I don't know what would be the way out. But for accessing, so in Thailand right now, it's been taken care by the government, that they organize all universities and pay by the government. So all universities in this group we can access. So the good thing is the government pay for that, but the bad thing is the government select which journal to be accessed to. So sometimes it's not what we want. So if we want something else, so we have to pay anyway. But it helped a little bit. So that's what we do in Thailand.
Okay, we'll go to the other three panelists for a quick final thought. We are a little bit over the scheduled end of the session. Bukola.
I think, for my final thought, I would emphasize the need for intellectual leadership by people in the Global South, and considering issues related to inclusivity in terms of our governance approaches.
Thanks very much. Sue?
So I was going to go back to the publishing issue, and 2 quick points to make. I think it really helps when the funder contributes to the publishing cost, although that's money going round and round. But quite often when they buy or try or whatever laterals, so we'll be co-funded with the EU, if the money comes in from South Africa, it's a completely different scale. And so then you still have the problem of the quantity. So now you're obliged to publish open access. You have to. It's part of your contract. But actually it becomes a very big part of your grant. So that still remains a problem. The last point I want to make is I think we're our own worst enemies. As long as we have a career track which values publication in Nature and Science and other high-level, high-cost journals and awards and so on that do that, we force ourselves to continue doing that. And so we can also look internally. Thanks.
We must overcome our addiction, yes. Tora, final word.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sue in that last remark. We are absolutely our own worst enemies, I think. On another take, I think I'm really happy that WUN make this Presidents Forum to deal with the partnerships and equitable partnerships. And I also sit here with the feeling that this has been discussed for the last 30 years at least. So we should start to do something about it. And that we have not come around to equal leadership of the large projects and so on is really a big question mark, I think. So in a way, it's something that we have discussed many times. We know the solutions, we know the problems, and we just have to do it.
Well, thank you very much to all of the panelists. I think it's been a really interesting session to listen to and I think to get some real value from. So many thanks. Let's show our appreciation in the usual way.
Thank you, Charlie and panelists. We have a break now. Mike, when do we have to be back? 11:15, please, back in this room. Thank you.